Jeez, guys. So quiet and serious all of a sudden. How's everyone doing? I got my is it Barry White? Barry White. I got my Barry White voice on today. Don't mind me. How are you guys doing today, man? Good, good. My name is Fred Merck, and I would like to welcome you guys to the sit down. I'm not being rude by sitting down while welcoming you. It's literally the name of the concept. So for the purpose of that whole thing, everyone has to be seated from now until you leave the store, like for the entire 2 hours that we're going to be here. And you don't get to participate, ask any questions, or say anything if you're not sitting down. Are the house rules clear? It's a joke, guys. It's a joke. Okay. I'd like to welcome you guys to the sit down. Hashtag the sit down. If you're taking pics or doing your thing on the gram, it is brought to you by the beautiful people here at Side Step and my family at Adidas, man. So show some love for those guys first. Come on. And these are the guys responsible for bringing this gentleman here on my right by the name of Austin Malema. What's up, Austin?
Doing right, Fred.
Hold on. Oh, okay, hold on. You see, I've been doing these elaborate introductions for everyone. You know, we did our first one with Shekinah last week Friday. We did one with DJ Spitza yesterday. And I was racking my brain on my way here, trying to figure out how I would introduce Austin Malema because he's done so much. It's not really even fair to call him a photographer at this stage, right? It's like beyond photography. You know, me personally, I refer to him as Millionaire Malema. I'm sure you guys have seen that Forbes, that little Forbes feature. I'm just trying to get in his good book so that by the time he hits the millionaire Forbes list, you know, I'm in his pocket. You know what I mean? We can be friends. We're good friends, right?
We've been good friends for a while.
Yeah, we're good friends. What's a milli or so to good friends, man? This I don't even know how to introduce him, man. This is the superstar photographer. You know what I mean? He's photographed everybody from Drake to Thierry Henry to every single musician on the continent. He's directed shoots. When I was the editor of Hype magazine, the first cover shoot I ever did with Ricky Rick, I called Austin and I said, "Yo, you need to be the guy to do this, man. You
people don't know that the very first cover I did, was with you.
People don't know how far back his ambition and his work ethic goes, but he's here and he's here at your disposal, and we're gonna have a good time and we're gonna have a conversation, and hopefully he's gonna drop some jewels. He's gonna drop some jewels on us. Before we get to Austin, though, who do we have here in the audience? Am I looking at photographers or stylists, maybe makeup artists? Or you guys looking at me like you have no idea? But I'm just trying to figure out, like, you know what I mean? What do you do, my dog? You're a photographer. Okay, cool. You're here to get some knowledge, for Austin drops some gems. What do you do, my dog? Photography. Okay. What do you do, ma'am? You're a brand. You look like it. Yeah, you look like a brand strategist and a model. My girl with the big hair in the back over there on her phone. What do you do? I don't know. You can tell me on a weekly or on a monthly. I mean, whatever you want. Like, why did you feel it was important to come here today? I guess is what I'm asking. Yeah, you're an aspiring photographer? No, you're a blogger. Okay, cool. We have a good mix of visual creatives here. You know what I mean? So that's right up Austin's alley, man. What's going on?
I'm easy, Fred.
What did you do? What did you do today? How did Austin Malema spend his day today?
Oh damn! What
Making
did
so
I
much
do
money
today?
he doesn't even remember. Making so much money he doesn't even remember.
I actually had a photo shoot. We did some stuff for the Iverson Tour match stuff. So yeah, that's what we did.
How did that go?
Went really well. It was a great time, as always.
Yeah. So I'm gonna ask you the cheesy interview question, just for the purposes of if there's anyone here who is not familiar with like your journey and where it started, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the reason we're here is because of Sidestep, but also Adidas Originals. And
Yeah.
you are an original because there are thousands of photographers and visual artists in South Africa right now who are, trying to do something similar to what you do.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out, when did it occur to you in your life that this was the path that you were going to take? Were you a visually inclined person as a kid? Did you figure it out in high school? Did you get dumped at some point and then you realized that the way to get into girls' heart was to take pictures? That's a personal story of mine. Didn't work out, and that's why I'm doing this. But tell us where your journey started.
Yeah, I think there's been so many moments in my life where I realized that they've contributed to where I am or my story with photography. The one that I always tell is the story about when I was a child growing up in Venda, and one of my mom's friends used to stay in a neighboring village, and he would come like on a weekend and he would take pictures. And you'd have to put on your Sunday best every single time because it's a once in a lifetime thing. And besides that, 2 years ago when I did a trip across Africa, across the continent. We always say Africa like we're in America. Across the continent, I realized that there was quite a bit, that I had kept at the back of my mind. When I was photographing in Nigeria and Ghana, there were parts of the trip that I photographed, and it reminded me of my childhood growing up in Venda and, on the bus coming to Johannesburg to visit my family. And I felt like that's all part of, the contribution of my story as a photographer. But the one time that I really knew that I wanted to be in visual arts was in grade 6 at Riversands Primary School. I had just moved to Johannesburg from Venda, and there was you guys remember Soul Buddies, right?
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So there was a point where, and this is a funny story because I just missed it by a year. Damn. There was a point where Soul Buddies were looking for aspiring writers, right? And they would be on the show the following year. And a kid from my school actually won it the following year. And literally, I had just missed it by a year because I was in grade 7 and I think he was in grade 6. And he actually got to win it. And at that time, I was like, look, if I don't make it as a director, I'm going to be an actor. And then there were 2 times that I auditioned at the National School of the Arts, and I failed dismally. But it just shows I was not meant to be an actor. I was meant to be behind the camera. So, yeah.
That's dope. Do you remember the first time that you picked up a camera?
Damn. The first time I picked up a camera was in 2006. My baby brother was about 2 years old. We had gone on a family trip to Wombats. I was just it was a small digital camera, just point and shoot, like the one with like 24 zoom. Like, yeah.
Yeah. Dope. So I find that with, arts in general, it's a tricky thing because you have to marry the artistic element of it with business, right?
True.
I think intrinsically, if we look deep enough, everyone is an artist, like on some level. Like you might be an accountant or whatever, but like everyone is an artist on some level. But the reason it's so difficult to kind of exist and make that your everyday life is because, that broke artist narrative is it's something that's been so prevalent for so long. And that's why it's especially great when someone who is an artist takes it to the next level and is able to make a living. And what are some of the challenges that you had in the beginning of all this? So at some point you realize, okay, this is cool. I enjoy this. I'm passionate about this. Did you decide to go to school for it, to varsity for it? and then after that, trying to get into the business of it. What are some of the challenges you encountered with that?
So I feel like that's a two-part question: school and the business. So for since grade 6, I felt like I am going to be in the arts no matter what happens. My heart was set on being a director on TV or in movies. I thought it was going to be a simple thing. I just go to school, get the qualification, and I'm a director. Done. I'm going to make Hollywood money here. But it wasn't like that. So I had always been interested in writing. So when I was in grade 6, I think that's when I started writing. And then high school came, like in grade 11, I never applied to any varsity, to be honest. I had said, I don't really know what I want to do yet, but it's still going to be in the arts. And I was just like, do I really need to go to school for this? If I'm born with it, why should I go to school? And my Afrikaans teacher at the time had studied drama at Wits at some point, and he was like, no man, you should just apply to the school called AFDA and see what happens. And I applied and got accepted. So my whole vision when I was going to AFDA was, I am going to study directing. I am going to be very good at this thing. I'm going to write and I'm going to direct some of the best screenplays we've seen. And when I got to AFDA, they were like, so they asked us during orientation week, they were like, who wants to make money here? And then everybody put up their hands and they said, if you really want to make money, be a producer. I was like, damn. That just means I must go be a producer, not a director.
Yeah.
And then, I kind of switched my mind. I was like, look, I'll write and I'll go study producing. Because really, we all want to make money in everything we do, don't we? It's not just about the passion. So I was like, okay, cool. Let me go study producing. But the problem was I couldn't study producing and directing at the same time because the classes clashed. So I took writing and producing. And came second term, they were like, okay, cool, you need to take 2 more subjects or disciplines. The 2 disciplines I took in the second term in first year were cinematography and editing. So now you can see where the photography comes from. And during that time, so I did 4 years at AFDA. In second year, I did cinematography and editing because I couldn't take on producing. And then I was like, you know what, it's okay. Third year, I really started enjoying editing. So I did editing in third year, and in my honors, I did editing. And, during all that time, I started taking photos at events, because I was young and I'm trying to look cool. I'm trying to get access to the coolest parties, I'm trying to have fun with friends, and if I'm not working, how am I going to make money? And the simplest way or the simplest thing for me to do was make money, but also hang out with the cool people. So if I've got a camera, I can get into the coolest places, hang out with the cool people, take pictures of the cool people, still get paid to do it. Who wouldn't want to do that?
You were thinking ahead.
Definitely. So I did that for a couple of years, and then I feel like I'm going to tell my whole story, and then we're going to,
That's why we're here, man.
All right, cool. During that time, I was never really thinking about a business or anything. I was just taking photos to go party at Liquid Chefs, to get into pop bottles. I was literally just doing it for the fun of it, And at some point, it was me and a friend of mine, Lozi, and we realized that we're really good at this thing, and people are paying us lots of money to do this thing. Why don't we just carry on doing it? And we took it serious. Like, it was no longer just about the parties, really. It was about the parties because now for the parties, we were targeting all the cool people only. Because if you took pictures of them, and it was the days of Instagram, so you took pictures of the cool people and you were the one posting it, you were the heat. So that's what we started doing, literally trying to get artists we were trying to be photographers for artists like way before the wave started in the country, to be honest. I had seen something that Kid Ink was doing, and I was like, that's really cool. And that's what I want to do. I want to follow like artists around and photograph them and shoot videos of them, and they can put them out every week. And nobody was really doing that at that time, you know. And we started there, and we hadn't thought about it as a business, to be honest. We were all getting paid into our personal accounts.
So at that point, so the reality, having an idea and going, oh man, if we take photos of influential people and popular people, we get attention, we can get more bookings. Sounds amazing, right? Yeah. But if you've ever done, well, really anything in life, you know that the idea of something versus the reality are completely different, right? I mean, you and I have had a lot of conversations over the years. You know what I mean? We've been involved in these things together sometimes, but in executing that idea, you and your homie at that time, and executing that idea and going, okay, we're going to take it seriously. What was something that you didn't anticipate would affect the execution of that idea or that vision that you had? What were some of the challenges? And I'm being emphatic on this because I know even with everybody sitting here, everyone's taken a chance at trying to do something, and maybe in the beginning we were like, oh, you know, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna blog, I'm gonna, you know what I mean, do photography, I'm gonna be a stylist, and then like you get into the pit and it's like, oh wait, this is not what I thought it was at all. Yeah, you know what I mean?
I think, you know, we were just enjoying what we were doing at first, right? And we thought it was going to be simple, like, you know, and as we thought, it's the cool people first. If the cool people allow us, everybody else will. You know, we were shooting some of the best parties, but the problem with that is we had made some mistakes, which were great mistakes in the beginning. So first thing is, and I'm not saying don't do this, guys, in all honesty. I think we just put ourselves to work for other people and for a very low price, right? And then we were like, man, we can do this ourselves. You know, there's no point in working for these guys that we were working for. We're already good enough, and these people know us. So we started trying to approach the clients or the people we would work for, like the event organizers. I remember one of the biggest organizers at that time, two of them actually. I used to do their events with another company, another photography company, and I tried to reach out to them and say, like, guys, just give me a chance to do this, and without having to go through these guys. Well, I was not really trying to take the job from them, but I was.
You were trying to take the job from them.
But not really.
It's cool. But yeah, that's exactly what you're doing.
And the guys were like, nah, you're not good enough. And it kind of hurt, you know. I kind of got turned down at that time. And then one of the things that I actually regret at this moment was not approaching one artist. I've worked with him before, but when he was blowing up, I remember I bumped into this guy at Vakamata.
Name. Give us a name.
It was just the year or a couple of months before he dropped Kusheshe. And he did not have a photographer or anything. And I was like, this guy is doing really well. And, you know, I think he had 2 hits, 2 music videos, and 1 hit song, Wahala. I know he doesn't talk about that song, but that song was doing really well. And I was like, this guy is something. And I was like, maybe I should ask him. And he gave me his number at Vaka, and I just never followed up. I was just like, oh, never mind, man. And then a couple of months later, he drops this song, Kusheshe, and he becomes this big superstar in the country. And I kicked myself for not, literally, because I thought about it. I was like, yo, just ask this guy if he can be his photographer, because he doesn't have a photographer. And yeah. And then I think also just in the beginning of it, we just never made, you know, businesses out of what we were doing. We just thought we were going to, you know, just shoot the stuff and, you know, we get quick bucks and we spend it as quick as we got it. But we never really, like, thought about registering businesses in time. You know, I feel like at that time, if I had about 6-7 years ago, if I had the knowledge I have today, one of the first things I would have done was register the business first and literally save as much as I could, and not worry about trying to spend money on going out with friends Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, because we thought if I if I made $5,000 in a couple of hours on Saturday in the morning, I can spend $5,000 because I'm gonna make $5,000 on Sunday. We just thought it was gonna happen like that.
Living every day like it's your last.
Definitely, and that's one of my biggest regrets is that just like everyone else, people you won't get the opportunities you feel like you deserve in the beginning. You have to literally prove yourself. But one of the things that I always say is that sometimes you don't have to prove yourself to those people. You have to do stuff for yourself first. Then they will catch on to you. It's never late for people to catch up to you when you're already big enough. I always say people follow what we did like a couple of years ago, which is not wrong, but like today for me it's wrong. I'm like, I wouldn't shoot celebrities for free, but it's because I did that for so many years that I feel like I was exploited at some point. I'm like, these guys actually, they know that they can pay a photographer for this thing. But today they'll be like, oh, nah, so-and-so, but I'll tag you. Yeah, it's great to tag me, but can you tag my bank account as well?
So let me ask you a question about that. So what does one do if I'm an aspiring photographer and I'm looking to become an Austin Malema level one day, right? You said that you started by seeing the opportunity for an industry that was already booming, right? So the musicians had everybody's attention, and you were like, "That's how I can bring my skill set there." So as an aspiring photographer today, I guess it's a balancing act because exploitation is definitely like on the,
you can't avoid it, to be honest.
It's bigger than
one way or another.
Yeah. So I mean, what am I to do if I'm not opening myself up to be exploited? Like, what are other routes that I can take?
I'll tell you one of the best things that we've got in this generation. Social media is a two-way street. It can either be really good for you or really bad for you, to be honest. I see some really amazing photographers on social media, and a whole lot of these young kids are getting booked off that. I think the one thing you need to do is separate yourself from everyone else. Create your work that speaks to you. Don't try create work that you've seen other people do. That you can do that in the beginning. Find your foot, and then literally step on their necks. Literally create your own work. I feel like I'll tell you this. I think a lot of people got to know me in 2016, right? But in 2016, I had been shooting since 2009. Can you see the gap between that? 2016 was when I actually started. We had done that cover in 2015. Yeah. And not a lot of people knew who I was at that time. 2016 was when everybody started knowing who Austin Malema is. And I feel like everybody forgets that there was about, my math is really bad, 15 minus 2009. That's about 6 years, right? 6 years of work behind the scenes. Like, it was not that simple. It was not that simple. Literally, I had been working my ass off, trying to get as many gigs as I could. Literally, I used to shoot pop bottles, like the after movie for pop bottles, for $500. Yeah, that's pop bottles from 9 o'clock and probably until 12 midnight for $500. That's how much I used. That's how much I used to work for, and that is between 2009 and 2014. And then at some point I was like, look, this is not really working out, but I still try to make money. That's when I started approaching artists. One of the first guys to really do that for me was DJ PH in 2014. When I got to shoot him on a trip to Cape Town. I did his video and his photos on a trip to Cape Town. I just think that a lot of people skip some steps. I believe you should always start at the bottom, the very bottom you can. There's nothing wrong with starting at the bottom, being an assistant, learning to assist. I remember 2016, I wanted to take time off to be an assistant, but it never really happened. But if I really got the opportunity to be an assistant to someone who's good enough, who I think is worthy, I'll definitely stop doing what I'm doing and go be an assistant and learn from the bottom. Doesn't matter how much you know, but there's a whole lot you can learn. So I just believe that if you really want to get into the industry right now, just be very wary of how people are. You know, exposure doesn't pay the bills, firstly. We always say that. You know, exposure only exposes an image, to be honest. Doesn't do anything more than that. And I just believe create work that speaks to you, that separates you from everyone else. If everybody's screaming right now, if we all just decided to scream, we're all just making noise, and somebody says something important in that noise, we won't hear it. But if somebody makes enough noise or keeps shouting the same message, everybody will see it, or at some point we will hear it. You know, my Instagram and, you know, I'm not even afraid to say this, I'm inspired by a lot of my followers on Instagram and on Twitter. There's a lot of young photographers who I follow, and I'm like, damn, at your age and you can shoot like that? I wish I shot like that at your age. Because the only thing I don't know about them is if they have the hustle in them. You know, if they can shoot like that and they've got the hustle, nothing can really stop those kids. I promise you, if you can shoot good enough today, in the next 5 years, I promise you, there will be some of the best photographers in the world.
So this leads into the next question that I had, or the next thought rather that I had, right? So with really any artistic endeavor, right, you get to a point where everyone is, not everyone, but there's a good number of people who are capable on a technical level. Meaning, for instance, the easiest example is maybe 15 years ago, 10 years ago, not everyone was a decent or competent rapper, right? Today, there's so many rappers that it doesn't distinguish you to just be able to know how to rap, right? You need to know how to rap, and then you need that thing that separates you from all the other people who know how to rap. I look at photography as kind of being in the same space, right? Like on your phone or whatever other device. Everyone has access to cameras. Everyone has access to an audience if you work hard enough at it. I can train myself on YouTube to have the technical skills maybe that Austin Malema has or someone else, right? How do you go about developing an identity beyond just being able to shoot? I know you've spoken about this, and when I think about all the photographers who are kind of shaking things up and making a difference, I feel like every couple of years they experience a creative like change in the trajectory of their work, right? Yeah. So how do you, and I think now more than ever, that's what makes Austin. That's what makes Cedric. That's what makes, you know what I mean? Because it's like you can shoot, but now how can I look at Austin's work and be like, okay, wow, this is what makes him him and not anybody else? How do you go about distinguishing that identity beyond everyone else?
I think before that happens as you grow and as you learn. I've always said, none of us are born with like the greatest eye. If you're a photographer, you learn from different people. You adapt. And I always reference this to this one documentary that I used to watch every single time I felt stuck on varsity. There's a documentary called Everything is a Remix, right? This guy shows you how Quentin Tarantino movies are remixes of 1980s and 1970s Chinese era films, right? All he did is adapted those into today's world, and he changed a couple of things, which means it's not an original, but it's a new original. For him, he just innovated on that. And for me, I always say that my style is an adaptation of a couple of photographers. When I was starting out on Instagram, there were a couple of guys that I used to go on Insta walks with. Literally, that was on a Sunday afternoon. We'd all meet up in town or at a location in Pretoria, and we'd just go around and take pictures of our cell phones, And you would learn from guys who come from a film background, guys who come from agency background, and you would just watch how all these guys created their photos. And then you would go on the Instagram itself, and you would find guys like Trash Hand, who is actually still one of the biggest influences in street culture when it comes to photography in terms of architecture. I used to look at that stuff and I said, you know what, I would like to try stuff like that. So when I would go shoot, I would go try stuff that I'd see on Trash Hand's page. Who else is there? There were a bunch of photographers that I used to follow on Instagram, and half of them are not as active as they were. But I used to look at all of these guys, and I'd be like, what makes them different? And I try adapt what they're doing into my style, And I like to say that my photography style is a mixture of different things. So I will shoot a concert like I am shooting architecture because of the stage. You need to show a bit of that architecture. And then I'll still shoot a concert like I'm shooting a portrait of a person by separating them from everything else. So it's all about blending different forms of photography. For me, I always ask myself, like, what am I really shooting? And a lot of people separate photography for what it is. Someone will say, oh no, I'm purely just a portrait photographer. But you can shoot a building like a portrait. It's the very same thing. You don't really have to change the basics of photography. It's just your approach. You have to change your approach. That will never change. So I just say I adapt different things. So when I go shoot a portrait of a performer, I'll say, okay, cool. Let's see what we're trying to get out of this portrait. Okay, cool. Post Malone performing, right? What are we looking at? I'm looking at the magnitude. When you look at magnitude in photography, you're looking at landscapes. That's how you look at it. You're shooting it like you're shooting a landscape. You got to show the beauty of this landscape where Post Malone is the only person or the only subject that's well lit in this dark area. That's how I look at my photography. I don't look at it like, oh no, I've got this specific style. I say, okay, cool. I am adapting what I've learned from portraiture into a landscape. That's the only way to really look at it.
Would you say that academic discipline is a must-have for to become a prominent photographer, or not? I mean, things have changed a lot since you were in varsity 20 years ago.
I got into trouble on Twitter yesterday because there's this question everybody asks photographers. Damn. Like, people are always asking, what camera do you use and what lens did you use to take this picture? And I'm like, it doesn't really matter, because if I tell you, you're going to try buy the very same camera and try get the same photo, but you won't, because there's so many factors that come into that picture.
You ain't got the juice like that. If you ain't got the juice,
you ain't got the juice. But
it don't matter what camera you got.
It doesn't matter, but and goes back to what I was saying. Like, if you're a good photographer, you don't need the most expensive camera. If you've got the very basics of photography, and those basics are very simple. It's composition, understanding of light, and literally understanding of subject. 3 things that will help you. Well, understanding composition, understanding light, and your camera, right? You could have I don't even know any small cameras, you could have a D500 or a D6000. It doesn't really matter if you know how to use your exposure triangle number 1 as a whole. That's the basics of a photo in a camera. If you know how to use your aperture, your shutter speed, and your ISO, those 3 things are the main things you have to master in your camera. Composition you can learn, But if you can master the relationship between your ISO and your shutter speed and your aperture, you're good, literally. And a lot of people don't seem to understand that very basic. And that's where they fail. Literally, a lot of people will be like, okay, cool, I'm gonna buy a 50 mil because Austin shoots on a 50 mil, or an 85 mil prime because Austin shoots on that camera. Okay, cool, I know what aperture does. If I open my aperture low enough, I'm opening up more light, right? That's what people think. But do you know that by bringing your aperture that low, you're actually affecting your depth of field and your sharpness in your image? Half of those people don't know these things because they're just like, oh, okay, cool. I know what aperture does. All it does is let in more light into an image. That's all I need. I need more light. It's too dark. Oh no, let me bring down my shutter. Your shutter is now you're going to bring your shutter down, and then you're going to have motion blur or movement blur. Or you're going to bring your ISO so high that your image has digital noise. Like all these things, understanding those basics is what is going to separate you from everyone, to be honest. I promise, like for me, I think it was easy because I was in film school. So in film school, you learn all these basics, and then I just literally transitioned into photography.
By the looks of some of your faces, I'm going to assume that some of you also have no idea what aperture and ISO and whatever other terms you use is. I was just sitting here like hoping that, you know what I mean? But that's why we're here. We're here to learn. But yeah, so going on that though, like you said, you were in film school. You know what I mean? So you had that understanding. I know there's been a conversation with regards to people in kind of like the self-taught group, and then people who have had formal training and kind of feel like, well, we went to school, we did this, we did that. How are you just going to come into the space and just, start taking photos on your iPhone and call yourself a photographer?
If I had the choice, I wish I never went to film school. I wish I was self-taught. Because when you're self-taught, you're more dependent on self. You learn how to do all these things yourself. I promise you know a lot more than those who went to school. Those who go to school get taught the rules and how to follow the rules. But when you don't know the rules, you can break any rule and create your own. But a lot of people who go to formal schools and have formal education on these things, they still find it hard, because for the longest time, you're literally kept in this box, and they're like, no, don't do this, don't do that. But when you're teaching yourself, you literally break down the box and you do whatever you feel like doing. And that's why sometimes I'm like, you know what? I don't really know why people have to go to school. Like, you can go to school to get the qualification. I've got my qualification. I don't really use it for much. And I feel like a lot of money was wasted at this school that I'm not even doing the same thing. But if I was smart enough at that time and my mom had internet at the house, I could have literally learned how to edit videos on YouTube. But here's the funny thing about the school I went to. I go to school and they're like, oh no, today we're going to show you how to make an in and out cut in an edit shot. Okay, cool. Now if you open the tutorials folder and you go to tutorial 1, you're going to learn how to do this. Am I really getting taught anything? I could have learned that from YouTube. The only thing I have is someone to come show me how to do this thing, because I'm struggling. But if I had internet at home, in one day I could sit down and still watch this video 10 times. I will figure it out,
No doubt.
But I just felt like some of these schools are just a rip-off, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't really like to talk about the school I went to, because I felt like we wasted money going in that place. If I knew someone who was doing who was an editor, I would have shadowed them for a couple of years. I would have learned how to do the stuff I learned in 4 years. I would have learned in a year. In all honesty, I learned the best stuff at that school in my honors year. I wasted 3 years. That's how I feel.
No doubt. Just to be clear though, don't go
to
home
school.
and tell your parents
Go to school.
you're trying to drop out. All he's saying is take initiative. Take initiative of whatever it is you're doing. So I want to fast forward a little bit. I think this was also 2016. It might have been 2017, but there was a whole new wave of people who learned who Austin Malema was during this time, specifically because of, I guess, some controversy, some controversy around what came to be known as the hashtag Credit the Photographer movement, right?
Yeah.
I don't think that you could have ever imagined that basically you standing up for your work and to be recognized, that it would turn into a movement for hundreds and thousands of creatives who in different fields and disciplines felt exactly the same way, because creativity can sometimes be such an abstract thing. Someone can be like, hey, come over here and help me set up my apartment, and you just did like their entire interior design fix, and then you don't get any credit, you don't get paid. So it's easy for creative people to be taken advantage of, and you were just kind of a guy who was saying, hey man, if you're going to use my photo, like at least credit me and tell me. And then it turned into this massive movement that literally went into every crevice of the creative field. Like, tell us a bit about that experience, how it started, what led to it.
Yeah. I think, a whole lot of people know one side of Credit the Photographer, all the stuff that they saw. I don't know if everybody saw the negative stuff, all the backlash that I had received during that time, because people said I was whining, I was being childish, I was fame seeking, for calling people out. And now the very same people, there were some photographers who said the very same thing, and now they're like, you know what, thank you very much for what you did for us. And it's like, I love how when you're in the forefront of this thing, the very same people you are trying to fight for don't support you until they actually see that it's worth it at some point. So Credit the Photographer was basically my frustration with hearing from different people and seeing it with my own eyes that publications were using my images and they were crediting it to Instagram, or not even Instagram, and not crediting anyone. They'd say photo credit Instagram. I'm like, whoa, that's amazing. I didn't know Instagram is called Austin Malema. So it was, I had done some stuff for, I think just before that, before the summers in Durban, I had done some stuff for Loot Love, and I saw it on a magazine, and the credit was Instagram. And I was like, guys, how the hell is it Instagram? Because she credited me on the photo. She said the photo was taken by Austin Malema. How is it that you take the picture and you say photo credit Instagram? Why don't you just say source Instagram instead of the credit to Instagram? That made more sense, but they credited it to Instagram. I was like, you know what? I'm getting tired of this now. And I tweeted, you guys are going to see what's going to happen at the summers, because there's going to be a whole lot of images credited to Instagram, right? So here I go, minding my own business. I take a picture of AKA and Bonang backstage. At that time, there was speculation that they were dating. Nobody had ever seen them together. There was like no media had ever put out an image of them together. So I take this
TMZ.
picture. Yeah, I was TMZing this ish. So I take this picture of them walking together, and it was a series of 3 images. It's them holding hands, and then there's a part where they looked back, right? So I'm like, you know what? I'm going to put this thing out because it's going to blow up right now. So I put it out, and this image trends, right? It's good. We're trending. Next thing is everybody's going off about this picture, and then they like photo cred Twitter. I'm at the awards right now. I'm like, I know this is going to happen. It's okay. We're going to let it go. And then right after the awards, we put out a whole lot of pictures during the awards. And we don't get our credit, to be honest. I'm just like, you know what? I'm getting frustrated. So I started tweeting about it on my way back to Joburg. Actually, before my way back to Joburg, I put out a picture of Pearl Tusi, right? Beautiful image of her getting her makeup done. So she goes and posts it. And then, same thing. I'm like, damn. Okay, I don't know what's really going on here. So my frustration really gets to me. I'm like, guys, credit the damn photographer. Like, really. So AK and Bonang went and did the same thing. So they took the photos because they saw them trending. Then they posted them. No credit. I'm like, wow, okay, this is really becoming too much. So I was like, how am I gonna get people's attention here? I've got Twitter, which was working great, and my whole point was it's Sunday. Black Twitter is always up on Sunday. You guys know, in the morning we are alight on Twitter. There's always something that's gonna pop on Sunday. So I'm like, I'm gonna take advantage of this thing, and I'm gonna start tweeting about crediting photographers, because you'll see on those images they're crediting the person who designed the dress and the makeup artist. But if I didn't take that picture, would it be there? No, it wouldn't. Nobody would see your great makeup. Nobody would see your great dress.
Thanks.
So I'm like, you know what? Credit the damn photographer. So I start going off about how I'm tired of publications using my images, and I start tagging all these publications that have been using my work because I took screenshots. I'm like, you need to credit the photographer, and I keep bashing all of them. Next thing, I land in Joburg. I've got my credits now. It took me whiling on social media and people noticing this. And at the back, people are like, yeah, you're just attacking celebrities because you want to be famous. Because if you do this, people are going to pay attention to you. I'm like, no, guys. The whole thing about this is, if you don't credit me and someone sees that image on your social media and they're like, you know what, that person is a really good photographer, I would like to book them. How, as a Pearl Tusi, are you going to reply to the DM of John Mang Mang, who you don't even know, who's not verified? Now, you didn't pay me for that image, right? And now you're going to deny me work. It's really that simple. If you credit, at least that person who sees that work. A lot of the work that I get until today is because someone's like, oh, I saw your picture that you took of so-and-so. That's how far a credit goes, because that person credited it. That's how they know who it is. It's just paying it forward.
Your work is your resume, basically. But even beyond that, even beyond booking, I think not crediting someone for work shows a lack of understanding for what it takes to come up with a beautiful picture like that.
I just think it's disregarding people, because the very same thing, if I put an AKA song on my video and I put it on my Instagram TV, they're going to take it down. Why? Copyright. So why does it have to be different for photographers? So you guys can get protected, but you can just exploit all of us with our work, because you know what? We don't have a big company like a Universal or Sony protecting us on that end. It's a bit unfair. We need to think about it the same way. We're both artists and we need to be credited. Or if AKA was on my song and I just said, no, it's just Austin Malema. That's it. When it comes to royalties, it's just Austin Malema. Is he going to be happy when I make a hit song that's going to go on? I'm using AK as an example, by the way. But is he going to be happy at the end where royalties worth probably a couple of $100,000 are missing from his pocket because I decided to say, you know what, he didn't write that verse, or he didn't contribute anything on my song. In the end, he's not getting his royalties from my song.
Right. I think one of the most impactful things about that whole movement is it didn't just stop and end with you, right? Every creative who could resonate to that got behind that bandwagon, because we've been in that space in one or another way. I mean, you turned it into an exhibition later.
Yeah.
But I think it was also a moment to educate, right? Because giving someone the perspective of, well, the reason you need to credit me when I take this photo is because beyond the bookings and beyond what I'm owed, this is what it takes to create a photo that dope. I think that understanding really changed everything, because for the most part, there were people who believed that, what does it take really to be a good photographer? You buy a camera, you point it somewhere, you press the button, and there you go. You know what I mean? So why do you like need so much like credit and so much attention. So the educational aspect of it was also like
We
really
did have
amazing.
to explain it afterwards to other people because there were fights like, oh no, you took pictures of me in a public space. Oh no, but there's public indemnity when you walk in. There were so many different things that we had to show people during that time that, look guys, you are actually like fighting the wrong battle. Just credit us. That's all we need, to be honest.
So I have two final questions before we open up to you guys. If you guys have any thoughts and questions, you can think about that in the meantime. There was a certain point where you kind of let it known that, okay, I'm going to be moving away from the things you guys have kind of become accustomed to with regards to my work, the kind of street photography or celebrity photography, and that you were going to focus your efforts on more like editorial stuff, you know. Why the decision to do that after, you know, carving your brand initially and your name in that space for so many years?
I think there are two reasons for that. One is for personal growth, firstly, and two, there are younger people coming up. You need to leave a gap. You know, I never see myself as a person who's going to be competing with young guys, to be honest, because we have two different energies. And I always say this, even with celebrity stuff, I've seen some young guys come up, and 1 week this guy's doing a different style of photography, next week is doing a different style of photography. And these people have the time to experiment all they want. You know, some of us don't really have the glory of doing that. I always say I'm always going to stick to the traditional photos that I do. I try not to have the typical visco grain edit, you know, not to like swap out the colors in an image. You know, those young guys are influenced by what they see today, you know, from their circles. And I always felt like, you know, if I stay in this space, I'm going to be forced to try and compete with these people. And I don't really want to do that because I know if I tried, I'm going to lose. So why don't I just move on up to a space that they're not in and just try open doors for those who are going to come up. You know, I felt like there was a point that young black photographers were not really represented in the space that I was moving into in terms of editorial work. You know, I felt like there's such a big market, but none of us are trying to get in there. A lot of us are just trying to be where I am currently, where is the cool photographer with hanging out with the stars, shooting all the cool streetwear brands. You know, I just felt like, you know, that's cool. That's really cool. It's great. But do I want to remain cool for the rest of my life? No, I don't. And when you move up, you actually learn that real money is, the further up you go, that's where you make real money, you know. But I had learned enough from where I was to try transition to the next space. I also felt like, you know, I need to kind of separate myself from a lot of these guys. You know, there was just too many people coming into the space, the very same space. And I was like, man, like we're all gonna start making noise now. We're all gonna start shooting the very same way. Everything's gonna start looking the same. So why don't I try move on up to the next level and see what happens there? You know, and that transition was not easy, to be honest. I actually funded my own projects for the longest time, spending money on renting out lights, spending time on sending work to retouchers, literally, well, spending money to spend money, spending time just trying to perfect the stuff. You know, it took me a while. I'd book out a studio and I'd have to ask a makeup artist to come through and do makeup for free, or I'd have to compensate them somehow, because, you know, we need to do a test to prove to people that we're able to shoot beauty stuff, you know, because nobody was looking at me like that. A lot of people were just saying, oh, Austin Malema only shoots like all the personalities. That's all he's good at. And I was getting tired of that. I was like, look, if I don't show it, I will never get the opportunity to do it. You know, it was that simple. Let me invest in myself and try move up to where I want to be. I just feel like there's another pillar that I'm trying to get up to now. I'm just in one place and I am almost where I want to be. So, and that's going to mean separating myself again, one more time. It's always for my own growth and for my financial benefit as well.
I'll ask you, what if you can name or like one or a few of the defining projects that you think made, kind of took you to the next level. I mean, when I start to think about what you've shot, who you've shot, I can't, there's so much that comes to mind. You've done TV shows, obviously you've shot personalities, you've shot streetwear, you've shot magazine covers. I just wonder though, I'm sure everyone who follows your work over here has their favorite kind of Austin Malema iteration. I have mine, but for you, what are the few projects that come to mind when you think about, like, man, if when I worked on this, it really catapulted me to a next level?
That's a very difficult question, because I forget some of my favorite projects when we talk about this. Damn. I'd have to see on Instagram. The David Beckham stuff that I recently did with Hey Clubman, that was really great. I think, a lot of people paid attention to me after that. People were like, damn, you got to shoot David Beckham. That was also like a dream come true for me as a child. I used to support United way back when. I used to. I'm not big on soccer now. That's why I used to.
You've been hurt too.
No. I'm just not big on soccer now. I'm just not big on soccer right now. Damn. Casper Vest, fill up the dome, fill up FNB. Damn.
I remember when you killed the Metro FM Awards in
2017. It was 2017.
That was pretty crazy.
The Metro FM Music Awards in Durban. That was great. The Safters. The past 2 years, that has been a great transition. Damn. Let's see. The stuff I did with the Queen was really great. That you see what I mean when I say I forget these things, because there's just so many projects that I've worked on that I feel like they're great, but sometimes it's just the number. I can't really say, but it's also because after I work on a project, to be honest with you, I detach myself. They're great projects when they come out, but depending on how long it takes for them to come out, I'm probably working on my next greatest project now. So the detachment is because I never want to feel like I never did enough. Because also, if you don't stop, it will never be good enough. So at some point you need to stop and step away from it and say, you know what, right now, this is the greatest it can be. Because I look at some of my projects, I'm like, man, if we just literally like tweak it again, and this is after we've delivered it, and you're just sitting back and you're like, maybe if we just change 1, 2, 3, it'll be better. So
I know every single creative can
do that. I always like, I like most of the stuff that I really feel like most of the stuff is my favorite stuff. There's some stuff that I felt like, damn, okay, cool, that's your weaker stuff, but I still like it. I can't really pinpoint like the greatest ones. Like, I feel like all of them are great because I've put them out. But to say which ones are really my favorites, it's always the next one is going to be my favorite for as long as it lasts, and then the one after that.
That's okay. They'll let us know which ones your favorites were. I know there's some inquiring minds out here. Are there some questions, some personal questions or technical questions that you guys have for Austin? This is a safe space. You know what I mean? Don't be shy. Tell us your name first.
Yeah, my name's Dimelo.
What's up, Dimelo?
Sure. So I just want to talk about this quickly because you talk about you should exposure doesn't pay the bills, right?
Yeah.
But then we also talk about the power of a credit. So how do you, I don't know, how do you rationalize that difference? Like, if a big company was asking me to do something for free and I'm coming up in the industry, that credit, but I'm just saying,
That credit
would be worth a lot.
That's true.
Right, for me going forward.
That's
so
very true.
have you ever in your career ever done something for free, and how do you decide to do something for free, and how do you decide not to?
I'm very wary of doing stuff for free, to be honest with you. I need some sort of commitment, because what I learned for the longest time is that someone comes up to you and they're like, Dumelo, I really like your work, right? And I would like you to do 1, 2, 3 for me, and we want you to be our photographer for the next 10 events or whatever. Do you know how many people they're saying that to? That's one of the things that I literally fell a victim to for the longest time, because I'll be like, oh, okay, cool, this is going to be worth it. And then the next day, they've got someone else with the same story. I always find it very difficult. So if I'm going to do something for you for free, we have to have something down to say, okay, cool, if I'm doing this, there's commitment for 1, 2, 3 things that are going to be beneficial to me. So I just wouldn't do it just for the credit. There has to be some sort of return to me as well. Either I'm going to get the next job that you're doing and you're going to pay me for it, even if it's not my full rate, but at least I know for the next time I'm going to get paid. We're going to have to negotiate on something that's worth it and beneficial to me. I'm not going to work for credit. The only people that I ever do stuff for free are people that I've worked with for a long time, because we've got that relationship. So sometimes I understand that, right now they're struggling or they're not the budget. So I'm going to be like, oh, okay, cool. I can help you out here. We'll give you a discount, or we'll do it for free because we've had the relationship for the longest time. But if it's the first job, I always say I'll never do it for free. Rather pay me for my first job than the next one maybe we can do for free. Because I know that it's going to be worth it at some point. So rather pay me today, and then tomorrow you'll pay me 1,000 rand tomorrow. Today, pay me 1,000 rand. Tomorrow you can pay me 500 or even 300. At least I know that the first job was worth it. I'll never do the first one for free, to be honest. No questions. Oh, great.
Hi everyone, my name is Geeta Meti. I just want to perhaps clarify something in terms of the whole credit to the photographer thing. This is probably something that people don't really understand in terms of copyright law, but it's important to always know that when it comes to copyright law, credit the photographer is not just a movement that happened because, you wanted to be recognized for the work that you've done. So something that was nice to have. So I'm basically addressing the backlash where people say he was whining, It's actually a right to be credited. For as long as you as an artist have not assigned your right to the actual work that you have created, technically you are always supposed to be credited. So even if a client has actually commissioned your work for you, so someone has paid you to create a work that is owned by them, for as long as you haven't assigned that moral right, it vests in you, and therefore every time that they use that image, they have to credit you. So I just wanted to make that clear. So credit the photographer is actually a right. Cool. If they don't credit you, they're transgressing your rights. They're infringing on your rights, basically, yeah. Which means you have a claim if you want to take them to court.
Hi,
Hello.
my name is Balesa. So, funny enough that she went to the legal route with it. I wanted to ask, because we know that with artists the issue is royalties, and with actors there are also other things that end up with them retiring or dying poor. In your in your line of profession, what is it? What are the, well, besides copyright now, what are the legal issues that photographers are dealing with?
I think the very first thing is the fact that they don't understand the rights that they have. That's the very first thing. A lot of us don't understand that. And the one thing is, we don't learn where the real money in photography is, right? And I remember having a conversation with someone from Getty Images, and they said to me, your real money in your images is not getting paid to make the images, is how the images live, you know? And a lot of us just focused on creating the work and getting the quick buck, you know? But nobody knows that you can negotiate to own your copyrights, you know? As soon as you negotiate that, at least you know that no matter what happens with that work, when someone tries to buy it, you know, you can sell it for however much it's worth according to, I don't know how people calculate how much their work is worth, but there is a way, which is, I think it's your daily rate times by 10 or something like that, right? And I think the very basics is trying to understand the rights that you have. Okay, and a lot of us don't understand them because we rush to get paid, and we always feel like however much we're getting is going to be worth it. You know, we've all fallen trapped to that thing when someone says, "Oh no, I'll give you 15,000 rand for this image," and you think, "Damn, I'm gonna make 15,000 rand of one image." Okay, cool, but you don't understand what they're going to use it for. The real worth, you know, 15,000 rand for one image could be one billboard on Senton Drive, you know, and they're gonna make 10 billboards, 5 of them similar to Senton Drive, and you've been paid 15,000 rand, which is one billboard, when you could have, So you just have to understand the licensing of your images, copyrights, then you'll be fine. Find someone who can help you with that stuff, you know, literally, if you can understand that, and also stop focusing on creating images to be paid right now. You know, it's creating images and then licensing them for like stock images and stuff like that, because those guys will actually help you as well get paid, you know, because at least you're going to get like a 3,000 rand every time someone downloads that stock image. You know, that's not 3,000 rand once, you know, unlike most of us, we're like, oh, you know, I can get paid 3,000. That's fine. You know, I don't have money. 3,000 rand is going to go a long way right now. But 10 years down the line, that image is worth probably 1,000,000 rand, and you got paid 3,000 10 years ago because you didn't understand the laws. And that's the biggest problem we all have as creators. It goes back to musicians, you know, musicians signing 360 deals without understanding what it really means to be on a 360 deal. It's like, okay, cool, the company's gonna pay for me to make music. But you know, they putting all that money in for you to make the music. At one point, when you start making a dime, they want their money back, you know. So for us is, let's just understand the laws and how they work for us, firstly. And a lot of, I was one of those guys. I promise you guys, I was one of those, and it took me a while to learn. There's nothing wrong with admitting that, you know what, I don't know 1, 2, 3, you know. Like now, I've just helped a couple of friends who were trying to get a billboard done, you know, because I've had a couple of works put out with agencies. But sometimes if you don't know what to do, just ask someone. There's always going to be someone who can help you. Either ask a photographer or a friend who's in the law who can direct you to the right people.
Hi everyone, I'm Dumelo. I just wanted to say well done. I've seen you grow from a while back now. It's been some time and I think you're doing amazing. Hearing your story and your journey is quite inspiring, and it helps us as creatives here to believe that what we're doing right now, we're going in the right direction and still just ever evolving. I was relating a lot to how you were not remembering to all the projects that you've been doing. I've come to realize that the life we're living now is really about the journey we're experiencing and not about the final destination. Because I mean, you've worked with a lot of big brands, and it's how we all live. We're so aspirational about like where we want to get to when you want to work with this brand. But once it happens, it gets there, it happens so quickly and it's done. And you move on. Like, it's so kind of short-lived, and it's just like, you know, what now? And what drives you is the fact that you're doing what you were born to do and what you're passionate about. If you're not doing that, then it just throws you off entirely. So, you know, looking at it from a different space, it looks like, oh, you're doing so much work, you know, and it's so like, wow, you've made it type of thing. But this life we're living, guys, it's so insane. Like, you know, it's really beautiful to see you up there and you're doing so great. But at the same time, you're still on that journey, growing and just doing your thing. And it's about like enjoying the experiences that you have with us that are learning from you, the people that you're working with in the industry, and the engagements you have. You know, the industry you're in, we're learning that it's about the relationships we create and the people we're working with. People have this idea of thinking that a brand is just like a company and you just have a name behind it. But there's actual humans that are there and they're watching your work. And that credit, as you were talking about now, goes that far. Because we have that detachment thinking that brands are just brands, but there's humans behind those brands. Those human beings are on social media. And when they're in their office spaces, they're thinking of ideas of who to work with. And, you know, you'll come up when they think of what they looked at when they were at home. So that credit really, really does go a long way. So big ups to you, well done. And yeah, let's keep doing this.
Thank you very much.
How's it? My name is Sepo. I just want to touch on a point that you mentioned earlier in terms of building a sustainable career within the creative, right? I think what you mentioned in terms of investing in yourself and you taking your own money and creating the work that you want to be booked for, but also building on that, knowing that in the same way that you as a creative want to be paid for what you do, understand that there are other professionals around you. So speak to people who can help get your taxes right. Speak to people who can help you out to set up your company right. You know, it's all good and well that you're talented, but how do you make sure that carries on? How you invoice is very important, for instance. How in your invoice you have the right terms so that people pay you on time, you know. Getting all those things right at the beginning help you to have a very sustainable career. So in the same way you're a professional and you respect your craft, understand that some of your friends as well who study different things can help you create a business sustainable. And, you know, you can ask for help, but also don't be so adverse to paying them as well in the same way that you want to be paid for your work.
Very true, very true.
Cool. Thanks.
Hi. Austin, first of all, I just want to send a shout out to you, bruh. I've been obsessed with your work since, I don't know, I've got two favorite pictures which I'm going to tell you. There was a lady you shot in a yellow mountain and she was wearing a pink floral dress. So that's the picture that I kept thinking, how do you do that and what the lens you used. So, like, there's a lot of things, and one thing is I work for UKZN. Like, I've been working for UKZN as a photographer for 4 years, self-taught, and I want to be someone like you, or maybe 10 times better than you, even though
I'd say 10 times better.
But the most challenging thing that I face is what these guys were saying. Like, I would find good clients. Like, okay, I don't know where I'm working right now. I think I'm doing a greater job than some of the people that they get hired there. But those people get more money just because I don't have papers. Do you understand?
Yeah.
So how do you price yourself and the value that you think you have? And sometimes the challenges that I have, fear of losing clients, because how do you juggle that? And
that's yeah. You know what? Losing clients is probably everybody's fear in any space. You know, I'll tell you two different things first. I'm gonna answer your one question and probably don't do what I did though. You know those people are getting paid more than you and you're better than them. I just believe you're probably in a place where you're just not valued as you believe. To be honest, that's the first thing. When I was in a situation like that, I left, and that's why I said don't do what I did. Right? I just felt like, you know what, I'm being undermined, and I just don't believe that these people value me for what's worth. So I used to be an assistant editor on Skim Sam, and you know there were 2 assistant editors and a junior editor. And when the 2 main editors left, they went and hired 2 other editors outside instead of promoting from within. And I just felt like, you know what, I'm not going to be in a space where I'm not going to be supported, or they just don't see my value, because you know when the show came back, I was the main guy who was running the system, who knew how the whole system runs. And I had to show everybody else how the system works. And they were still getting paid more than me, but I had to show them how the system works. And then when they went and hired 2 other people on top of me or above me, I was like, you know what, I'm not being valued here. But I think if you feel like that, you can stay in the space and just, you know, build yourself. And until you feel like you can leave and do your own thing, to be honest. The one thing we all have right now is the fact that there's always a need for what we do. You know, I feel like we are in the right business. I feel like we're in the business where, you know, there's always a need for a photographer, for a wedding, for an event. There's always different things that need photography. And this business will never literally die for as long as there are people like alive. The one thing about pricing is this is a very difficult situation or difficult conversation for anyone, to be honest, because there are 2 ways you can price, right? You price by experience or number of years, right? And whichever way you go, people will always fight you, you know, I feel like it's easier when you have a brand name, you know, because at that point people are buying into a brand name more than anything else. Your work, literally, if you feel like your work is good enough, I think literally you can have the conversation with the people you work for and point out, just show them. Like, you might get into trouble though, but it's always easier just to have the conversation before you do anything. You know, always just say, look, I feel like I am doing so much better than these guys, and the fact that I don't have a qualification doesn't mean that I am not good enough. I have done this for so long, and I just feel like at this point, you know, we are just choosing favorites in a way. You might get into trouble for it, but I'm very vocal about the stuff that I don't like, and I always just try like put it out in front of everybody, or I just leave, because if you speak about something and it doesn't change, it just means that they don't really care about you. So don't just leave and say, you know what, Austin said that he left, whatever. But it's about the communication, and just be very smart about how you approach the conversation when you talk about it. You know, you can say someone could have the papers, and probably this probably happens to you, someone who has papers and they've probably graduated a year ago and you've been doing this for longer than them, and they're going to bring them in and they say they get paid more than you. But if you have the experience and you know how this whole system works, you're probably the very same person showing them how the system works. Why should you be getting paid less than the person that you're showing how to do this thing, to be honest?
I'm going to add something on Austin's behalf, because I've been there for some of the journey. I think also what's a really unfortunate symptom that we have in South Africa is sometimes you're not appreciated by the people who are in your immediate area, because they see you so much, and so they don't see you as a commodity. And it's not only until you go somewhere else and do something, then they're like, oh my gosh, he's so dope, and you've been dope the entire time. You know what I mean? I mean, everyone knows about like the black coffee thing. It's like one of the biggest examples that people use for that. It's like Black Coffee's been here, he's been dope since like he was in varsity, and you know, and not that we didn't think he was dope, but he really only got the respect that he deserved when he kind of went out there and made other people realize like how crazy he was, and then he came back here and he was royalty, you know. And I say all of that to say that even in Austin's career, I know that there were times where, he was sitting and looking at people shooting campaigns and companies and agencies who were being hired to do things, and they were charging $500,000 and he was creating work that was on par with what those guys were doing, or even better, right? But the times where that changed was where his work spoke for himself. So maybe he didn't get the 250,000 Rand contract to do the Maybelline shoot or whatever, right? But then that weekend he went and shot at the awards, and the impact of photos that he took that just were on Twitter or Instagram made the brands go, the same brands who said, well, we can't pay this guy 250,000 Rand. He's not an agency, he's not a big name, he's not a that. But then the impact of the work that he did, made them go, man, geez, the dude who we paid 250,000, we didn't really even have that kind of impact. You know what I mean? So I think there's something to be said about letting the work speak for yourself outside of your immediate environment, especially when you feel like you're not appreciated, by the people who you kind of see and work with every day. Yeah.
When it comes to losing clients, there's nothing wrong with losing clients. I promise you. It just frees up space for you to either do stuff that you want to do, or it frees up space for the next good client. I've lost clients and I've lost jobs. Funny thing that happens quite often, I lose. So client sends us a brief and say, we want to do 1, 2, 3. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. This is how much it costs you, right? And they're like, oh, no, we found another photographer. 2 weeks down the line, they're like, hey, Austin, listen, we would still like to do this job with you. Whoever we got to do this didn't do such a great job, and that for me is the pleaser, because now I can say, oh, okay, cool, my quota's gone up by 10% now, because, it's not my fault. Like, really. I've lost some really, really big clients, and what I love about it is I look at it and I'm like, a couple of years ago, I used to work with a really dope alcohol brand. And then someone started doing it. And then I look back on their social media, I'm like, damn, it's not as good. So it's okay. Keep it moving. Don't worry about it.
Hi, I'm Kaibo.
You doing, brother?
So my question is, what advice who models are doing? Then you start doing that. What advice would you give them based on competition?
Don't compete. That sounds very simple. I'm gonna give you an example. Post Malone, a couple of months ago, right, performs in Joburg. I rush home because I'm like, damn, I really want to put up a dope photo right now before the end of the night, right? Get home, other photographers have put up their work, and I'm like, damn, I need to put something out. I pick a mediocre picture because I needed to put something out, right? 12 hours later, I'm sitting, going through all the images. I start finding all the great works. What mistake did I make? I competed with those who post their work first. I promise you, competition is great for some things, but sometimes you lose yourself in competing that it is not worth it. I actually had to archive that picture because I was like, damn, this is actually not worth it, because the whole point was nobody was going to beat me, right? Nobody's supposed to beat me, but I'm going to put something out. And I just put out something mediocre, and literally a couple of hours later, I realized those who punch first don't throw the best punches. They're punching because they want to knock you out first, but if you're really in it for the long run, you're going to fight until the 12th round, to be honest. Don't compete with anyone. The worst thing that you can even do is compete with those you look up to. I used to say this. I used to be like, I want to pitch against the guys that I look up to. But you know what the problem is? Those guys have 2-3 years experience on pitching above me. That my pitch is probably mediocre. I can create a pitch with 100 slides. He's going to win the job with 10 slides. Because he knows what to say in the room. I'm going to try explain everything. And these guys are like, damn, yeah, it looks great, but you missed one point that guy knew because he's been doing this for 3 years. Just don't compete with anybody who has been doing this for long. Compete with yourself. I always say my best competition is myself. My biggest competition is myself, because if I can beat myself, or the more I compete with myself, the more I improve. I'm not really competing with anyone. I'm actually improving myself. Sitting back, I'm sitting on Instagram and watching the stuff that all these people do. You actually notice that 90% of these guys' work now looks very similar, to be honest. It's all shot either on 50 mil, 85 mil, because everybody's shooting for bokeh, depth of field, because that's what makes a picture today. It's the same as shooting on an iPhone, to be honest. There's nothing as different. That does not really make the picture great. It just makes like your background blurry. Is that what really makes a great picture today? A blurry background. That's the only thing we like in pictures. We don't care about the technicality of a picture. We don't care about how the model looks, how the person is posed. A blurry background is what it takes to make a picture today. That's all. So just don't compete, because you end up turning, and because everybody's doing the same thing, now you feel like, what, this is where the industry is going. I'm also going to go do that. Are you different? No. You're actually just following everybody. Now, we're making the same noise. We're back to making noise. Who are we going to pick out? No one, because it all looks the same. So I think just with competition, just don't compete with yourself, with anyone, especially those who have years above you. Rather, if you're going to compete with your friends. It's friendly competition. You might just beat them on some jobs, but that's the only way to do it.
It's KP over here. Sure, Austin. Hey, I've seen your name more than I've seen your face. Well, I'd like to say nice to meet you, man. I don't know, I've seen your work way before I even thought of, doing photography, way before I even thought it was a thing or whatever. Nice to meet you, man. I absolutely love your work. So, here's one thing here's how I started getting into pictures. One of my friends is a graphic designer or whatnot. So sometimes they do these ads or whatever they do, these campaigns they do. So there's a job you wanted to do, and you needed like people of a certain ethnic group, so to say, because when you go into these,
just say it. I promise you, there's nothing wrong with saying. There's actually a need for diversity in this industry.
Okay, you needed images of black people doing ordinary things like being at a beach, going on a picnic, those sort of things. Because when you go into these stock image sites, there's close to none. Yeah. So I did this little job for him. I started seeing the image everywhere and all of that thing. And it goes... I understand now the other parts about your image, the rights to your image and so on, and the usage of your image and how that generates capital for you as the artist or the photographer behind the image. But I don't know if you know, how do these stock image thingamabobs work, and is there one where you can find diversity, you could find people of certain ethnic groups? Because hey, I'm struggling. I don't know, some of the guys here probably are, in that space. Do they ever try to create, that sort of work to say, simple thing, a black family just having dinner. If you try to look up an image like that, it's hard to find. And I'm always looking at other people that have been doing this for years to say, how come you never thought of this,
I think it's the way this whole diversity thing has changed now. With a whole lot of need for black people doing things is because of the change where there's a lot more black people at the top, or there's a whole lot of black consumers that we need more of their stuff to represent them. But Joshua Kisi, he is one of the first guys who started a black stock photography company, and he's doing great. So probably look him up. He's based in the US, but from Ghana. His company is doing really well. I just think that a lot of people weren't looking at it like that. There was just no need for it. Why did we need the diversity if we had people who are good enough to show for our product? But with the whole climate now, there's a whole lot of need for black people doing different things. But you're actually in a great space. You just need to find a good enough stock bank that can probably get your stuff, because every single time there's always a need for black people doing black people things. And who better to shoot black people than black people, to be honest.
Hi guys, Noah here. Firstly, regarding investing in yourself, a lot of photographers say, as you've said right now, we need to invest in studio photography, all those things. So now I'm confused because I'm the type of person, like I use an Olympus, pretty out of date, but it shoots really good pictures. So I'm investing in a camera that I can buy, but now I'm complicated because I also want to get into studio and shoot and test and do all that.
Yeah.
But right now, I'm all over the place. I don't know whether I should go for the camera or go for the studio, because recently I've been checking out studios, prices of studios. I'm willing to save for that. I'm willing to pay for that. As long as I'm learning something, I'm genuinely happy with that. But on the other hand, I'm still like, okay, I really need a camera. Yeah. And lastly, this is a personal question. Why did you leave Pixel Collective?
Okay, I'll answer. The first question: do you really need to get a new camera? Honesty. Do you really need to get a new camera?
Not really.
That's sorted. To be honest with you, and I'm going to tell you this is like from any place of truth. I think a lot of us buy new cameras because there's always new toys. We get excited. It's never about the camera. Cameras do the same thing, man. Unless you're buying a camera with like a larger sensor, there's no real point in upgrading in cameras. I know one of my friends used to shoot on a Mark 1 until this year, a 5D Mark 1. That's a very old camera, and it served him really well all this time. You don't really need to buy new gear. You can just, I always say, if you're looking at buying gear, invest in your glass first. If you get really good glass, your glass is going to last you for as long as you need it to. You don't really need a new camera. It's like iPhones. Cameras are like iPhones. We all get excited with the new iPhone, and everybody likes the one new feature. Now you're going to spend 13,000 Rand or however much to buy a new phone. I don't think I want to buy any new cameras after getting the camera that I want. I've got really decent cameras, really good cameras, and they're going to serve me for as long as I can, unless someone like develops something that's really great that I really need. I've got the basics. I've got Wi-Fi if I need to do stuff immediately. You can buy a card reader that connects to your phone if needs be. You don't really need to go all the way out and spend another 50 grand on buying a camera and then after a couple of years you're going to try buy another camera. If you've got a camera that works well enough right now, use it, save all the money you can, and when you feel like now you've mastered what you need, then you can buy a new camera. I see a lot of young guys shooting on small cameras and they're doing really well. They compete with those guys who've got full frame latest DSLRs. That's because they know how to use their cameras. We don't necessarily need the new toys or the best toys. Your second question, why did I leave Pixel Collective? It was for personal growth, to be honest. I started the company thinking that it was going to grow into something that was not, and we had differences with the other guys. So I decided personally, let me rather go my own way and grow on my own.
Oh, and lastly.
Yes.
It's not a question, it's just something. I once replied to a post you once put on Instagram, and this is actually my screensaver.
Oh, damn.
And you replied back, Austin replied to your story. Thank you, bro, with the emoji. And may your time come soon. I'm really inspired by that. That's why I actually put it as my screensaver.
Oh,
I'm not
damn.
really a groupie, but
No,
I
no, no.
really
There's
wanna-
no such thing. There is no. Let's clear that out. There's no such thing. There's no such thing. I don't have fans. I just have people who like my work. There's no such. There's no groupies.
Like, honestly, I'm the type of. Like, honestly, I'm the type of individual. I don't really go to celebrities and ask for pictures, but
Yeah.
I go to a photographer and ask for a selfie.
Bro, I really wish, like I always say to most photographers, I just wish that, their time comes and they may shine 10 times as me. I feel like we are walking so the next generation can run, and that's all we're trying to do. I just feel like, we were the first generation of what we did. The next generation, the next wave is actually going to run past us, which is going to be great.
Hi, I'm Zama, and my question is, what have you learned about yourself since you've become a photographer?
What have I learned about myself since I became a photographer? That's a tricky question. What have I learned about myself? I never really thought I was as creative. We all creatives, but I never really thought I am that creative. But I've learned that I am creative beyond what I thought, and that I am really patient. Those are the two things. Photography needs you to be patient, whether it's about getting paid or getting the right picture. So you literally have to be patient. So yeah, those are the two things. Was that the last question? No, I think there wasn't. That's about it.
All right, guys. One time for Austin Malema, man. Let's show him some love. That was really dope. That was really, really dope. Drop some knowledge on us. What we're gonna do right now, I understand that there are a couple of people who submitted some photos.
Yeah.
Are you guys? Is there anyone here who submitted some photos?
Cool.
That's real cool. So what we're gonna do right now is we're gonna display some of those photos on that screen right there. You know what I mean? This is what you get when you come to a side step. You know what I mean? We don't just talk.